Hi everyone, this is Sky Norris with the Skylights for sportsblog.com, and this is your college football week 3 review. Sorry I didn't get to this sooner. I've been sort of consumed by Breaking Bad lately. This show's just got me completely hooked. I'm finally caught up on all the episodes, so I'm looking forward to this Sunday and seeing the second to last episodes of the series. But anyway, let's get to the actual topic, which is sports, college football. So with my top five, I do have one change, starting with number one, Alabama. They looked good last week against Texas A&M. Although there are some questions about that defense. They gave up 628 yards to the Aggies. I know the Aggies are a great offense, but still, the defense 2 years ago that beat LSU in the national title game would not have given up those kind of yards. So it's an interesting question going forward to looking forward to the SEC title game and where they're going to have to play a very good Georgia offense, and to the national title game if they get there, where they'll have to play probably a very, very good Oregon offense. So that's a very interesting topic looking forward with the Crimson Tide. Um, Oregon looked very, very good again. They're number two in my rankings still. They won 59-14 against Tennessee. Mariota had a career high with 456 yards passing. He looked outstanding, actually. Not to spoil anything, well, I'm going to spoil it anyway. He's first in my new Heisman standings. With his standing in the national title race and just the way he's played through these first three games has just been outstanding. So Oregon again looking very, very good. Clemson was off last week. They're number three. They'll play tonight against NC State. Number four is Georgia. They were off as well. They will play this Saturday at home against my school, the University of North Texas. Sorry, UNT fans. And my fellow UNT students, it's going to be an absolute drubbing down there in Athens. So don't expect anything. Don't expect any surprises. Anyway, and the new member of my top five, the Florida State Seminoles, who had a 62-7 win against Nevada last week. Jameis Winston threw for 214 yards, two touchdowns. Carlos Williams ran for 110, and Devontae Freeman ran for 109. Total rushing yards, 377. They looked very good against the Wolfpack, taking them to the woodshed. And that defense through the first two games has only given up 10 points a game, and they do look very, very good. So the Seminoles do catapult into my top five. The reason I took Louisville out, they looked less than impressive against Kentucky, with only winning 27-13, and Teddy Bridgewater stunningly only held to 250 yards passing when he had over 400, I believe, in the first two games. So very unimpressive win for Louisville. So I had to take him out of my top five right now. I just think Florida State is the hot team to go with. So with that, some of the things I really learned this week, the national title picture, I don't know if it's as complicated as it may look. Alabama or whatever SEC champion, I think, is going to play the Oregon Ducks. Alabama looks very good. Obviously, some questions with that defense, so it's still a big question mark to me whether or not they're going to win the SEC championship. But as for Oregon, Oregon has absolutely dominated through these first three games. They're averaging 60 points a game. No, excuse me, they're averaging 61 points a game. Their average margin of victory is 60 points a game. And, I don't care who you play. That is incredible how explosive that offense is. This is why, one of the big reasons why I think they're the team that's going to win the national championship this year. That offense is just ridiculous, and the defense is played well enough. They're not super explosive, super give you nothing defense, but most certainly they've been good enough, and they find ways to keep you from scoring. They're a defense that can get turnovers on you. I believe they're fourth in points against, just giving up 9 points a game, if I'm not mistaken. So Oregon has been very good defensively now. They haven't played very good competition. That's definitely something to note. Tennessee was 2-0 through the first two games, but I don't think anybody really thought the Vols were that formidable of an opponent for the Ducks. So it'll be very interesting to see, how they do, especially this weekend against Cal, who's the top passing team in the country, with Cobb and company coming in to Eugene. It should be an interesting game. So also, talking about the SEC teams, Georgia's schedule sets up very nice for them. Alabama's schedule sets up really well for them. Aside from that game against LSU, I don't think there's anyone who can beat them on their schedule left other than LSU and whoever they might play in the SEC title game. In Georgia, they have one really tough game against LSU and then somewhat of a tough game against Florida. But Florida I don't think is very good this year. So the Dogs and the Crimson Tide should meet up again in the SEC title game, barring a surprise defeat from LSU. Is the only team I think that can beat either one of those teams, but I don't think that they will. So anyway, getting to our next topic of discussion, how about the Texas A&M defense? It needs some developing, but with that developing, if it's good enough, and if Johnny Manziel and Mike Evans decide to stay for another year, they could be one of the national title front runners, maybe the front runner. With that offense, the way they just tore up Alabama's defense, and yes, as I said, Alabama's defense isn't as good as it's been in past years, especially that defense that won the national title in 2011, or was it? It was 2012. Excuse me. The 2012 Crimson Tide defense was just unbelievable, with Courtney Upshaw, Dante Hightower, Drake Kirkpatrick, Mark Barron. I could go on. A great defense, and this defense is not at that level. But still, A&M tore up a really good defense last Saturday. So with the development of that defense, and it really needs some development. Just listen to some of these statistics. Scoring, they're 108th, 36 points a game. Rushing, 260 yards per game. That's 117th. Their pass defense is 68th with 229 yards a game, which, given college football's current landscape, isn't that bad. But again, they did give up 334 to Mr. McCarron last Saturday. And A.J. McCarron, he is a good quarterback, but he's definitely not one of your top passers in the country in terms of, the yards he can put up in a game. I don't think he's among that group. So definitely not necessarily as promising as that statistic may seem for the Aggies. Total defense, they're 114th, giving up 489 yards a game, which is just ridiculous. That's not good at all. They gave a 568 yards to the Crimson Tide, who had really struggled in their first game against Virginia Tech. And but it's important to note 6 new starters on defense this season for the Aggies, and they're all underclassmen. So with them coming back next season, we should see some big improvement in that defense. Mark Snyder is a good defensive coordinator, and even over the course of this season, we should see some improvement. Stanford, you got questions about Stanford? I most certainly do. But we'll get some answers this Saturday when they take on Arizona State. As for the offense, it's just it doesn't look very good through the first 2 games. Are you kidding me? Only 34 points a game through the first 2 games against pretty poor competition. They're racking up 406 yards a game, which is, through the first two games, pretty pedestrian because at this point in the season, most teams haven't played very good competition. So the statistics are often, you know, irregularly high, but certainly that's just not very good for the Cardinal. Uh, the rushing offense, 47th, 200 per. The rushing game was supposed to be a strength for the Cardinal this year, according to many experts, which I didn't really necessarily understand because they did lose Stephon Taylor, and as good as their offensive line is, that does not discount how good of a running back Stephon Taylor was, and none of these running backs have really proved themselves yet, and they haven't played a really good defense either yet. So we'll definitely see how things work out for them this weekend against Arizona State. Arizona State has a really good quarterback in Taylor Kelly. So far this season, 63 completion percent, 652 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's eighth. Arizona State's eighth in passing yards, 358 a game. So definitely a very explosive Arizona State offense is coming to Palo Alto. Defensively, the Cardinal have given up 16.5 a game, which isn't bad, I guess. They haven't played very good competition again, so the defense has been all right, but not, the shutdown defense, I suppose, everyone was making out Stanford to be preseason. Again, we'll see. We'll definitely see. Those two games weren't as impactful, so the Cardinal, really, you can't necessarily measure them too much on that, but most certainly they have looked relatively mediocre through the first two games. Definitely not a top 5 team. I don't know. I still don't understand why they were ranked in the top 5 this season to begin with. I don't care if they won the Rose Bowl. They don't have proven receivers. They don't have proven running backs. Their quarterback, he only played, I think, half of the season, Kevin Hogan. So we'll definitely see. Arizona State's defense is also 20th in scoring defense, giving up 15 points a game, and they are 52nd in rush D, though, giving up 141 yards, so maybe a chance for the Cardinal to take advantage. I haven't really decided on who I'm going to pick yet, but I am leaning towards the Cardinal just because the game's in Palo Alto, so we'll definitely be able to find out more about Stanford this weekend. I am most certainly very intrigued with that game. That's why it's my game of the week. Anyway, Texas, I had to touch on this. Another loss. More pressure on Mac Brown. They lost at home 44-23 to Ole Miss. Bo Wallace, he had 177 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the real stat to note, they gave up 272 total rushing yards to the Rebels, which is just a small fraction of what they gave up last week to the BYU Cougars when they gave up 550 yards, if I'm not mistaken, against the Cougars in Provo. But, again, they gave up this time. They gave up a 6-point halftime lead, and they didn't score once in the second half. They gave up a total of 27 points in the second half to Ole Miss. I mean, that's just unacceptable. If you're Texas, you got to be better than that. You have to be better than that, bottom line. And also just given everything that's happened recently, with Nick Saban, with a new story coming out that Texas Board of Regents have talked to Nick Saban's agent. They talked to him in January after the national title game, and most certainly that's got to be a little bit of a red flag for Mac Brown. Texas also offensively was pretty bad. They went under 200 yards in both passing and rushing, and only racked up 320 yards, which really isn't a lot considering the talent Texas has on that team. So again, Mac Brown has got to be better, if he wants to keep his job. This is why I think this is his last year, because it's just not working. Bottom line, another week, another 20-point loss, you know, and that's just not going to cut it with Texas. And although, I think it's highly unlikely that Nick Saban ever leaves Alabama, I mean, still, it's a, interesting story nonetheless that Texas has been talking to other coaches is an indicator of concern for Mac Brown, or at least it should be. Ohio State, this is one of the headlines I want to touch on, gave up 503 total yards to the Cal Golden Bears. And now I know Cal is first in the country in passing yards, but they haven't played the most outstanding competition thus far, and Cal is also not really that high up there in total offense or scoring offense. So definitely the Buckeyes defense hasn't looked spectacular through the first three games against average teams. So, I mean, luckily for them, the schedule is pretty cozy for them, because the tough games that they do have, most of them they get at home. I believe they get Wisconsin at home. They get Michigan. I think they get Michigan at home. But the schedule isn't very tough for them. So, the Buckeyes are looking good in terms of possibly running the table in the Big Ten, which I think is the most overrated conference in the country. But in terms of the national title picture, I really think they're losing style points. And I think that could end up hurting them in the chance they could have to maybe surpass Oregon or Clemson if it comes down to the last day of the season, which it usually does with the BCS given its history. Now, NC State and Clemson tonight. I like the Tigers. I think, the Wolfpack really haven't played anybody through the first two games. So I really wouldn't worry that much if I was a Clemson fan. It's really not that big of a concern, this game. So I like the Tigers, and my Heisman standings have changed. Marcus Mariota is number one, given, his impactful performance on Saturday, and just given his standing in the national title race. I really think if the Ducks win out, this is really his to lose at this point. Taj Boyd, we'll see how he keeps doing, if he has, a more electrifying, more exciting season. But right now, I'd put Mariota at the top. Taj Boyd, I'd put number 2. Manziel, still number 3. He did lose to Alabama, but that ridiculous throw, I thought that was going to be his Heisman moment. I thought they were going to win the game. Maybe it still can be, because he's just had an outstanding first two games throwing the ball. Teddy Bridgewater, still number 4. He's still played really well through 3 games, although he had a disappointing performance on Saturday, but still going to leave him in there. And Jameis Winston comes into my top 5 in the Heisman. I know it seems a little premature, but the kid's been fantastic through the first 2 games. He's 40 for 45 on passing. That's unbelievable. So definitely Winston comes in my top 5. The reason I took out Braxton Miller, look, I know it's not his fault that he's gotten injured, that he's been injured through two of the games this season, but most certainly, when you're not producing and you're not in there, when standings are being updated on a 24-hour, news cycle, you got to take him out of there just because he doesn't have those numbers right now. We'll see if he can pick it up. If he can get healthy, we'll see. But for right now, that's my standings. So, and sort of an off-topic question for the poll question. Actually, two. I want to ask. I want to get your pick for Arizona State and Stanford. I want to know what you think about the national title race as well. What your pick is right now, what you're feeling, how you're feeling about it, and I also want to know, a little off topic, who you think should win Best Drama for the Emmys this Sunday. Now, Breaking Bad is so good, and I know it's in its last season, so it's probably going to win for sentimental reasons. But I want Game of Thrones to win. That's my favorite show, and I think it got snubbed the last 2 years, definitely. It definitely got snubbed the last 2 years when it should have won. So that would be my pick for best drama in the Emmys. But at the same time, I wouldn't be too upset if Breaking Bad won because it's just a spectacular show, and it's its last season. It still hasn't won the award, so I wouldn't be too upset if it won. It's a good way for it to go out, and this season has been great. So with that, this has been your college football week 3 review. I'm Sky Norris, the author of The Skylights on sportsblog.com, and I thank you